Cool, so let's get started. My name is Brad Neuberg. I work for Google. And today I want to talk about the state of the open web. First I want to say it's really great to be here. I got to see that yesterday. It's really amazing. I've always wanted to come to Prague. It's really an honor to meet all of you and learn about your local tech scene. And so look forward to having good conversations in the hallways and before and after. I just want to know just sort of more about the audience. Who here programs with JavaScript as their main language? One of their main languages. Okay. Okay, sure. And who here is more, mostly does server-side development? Yeah, kind of. Who here programs mostly in Java? That's okay, you can raise your hand. You don't have to be scared. I program in Java as well. How about PHP? Nice, nice. And who here knows what things like HTML5 or SVG are? Okay, good. Good. You'll know more about those by the end of this. So that's great. And who's from Prague? You live here, but you're not from here. Awesome, awesome. Cool. And I also want to say, too, at any point in this presentation, if I say something you don't understand or I'm talking too fast, please raise your hand, ask a question. So that'd be great. So I wanted to throw one Star Wars sort of laser thing somewhere in the speech. It's one place. So now we know a little bit more about you. I wanted to talk about who is this guy up in the front of the room. Just some of the things I'm involved in. So one of the things is I'm an Ajax person. My motto is I like to get web browsers to do things they weren't really designed to do. I'm a JavaScript person. I'm a member of the Dojo project. That's an open source JavaScript toolkit. Things like Dojo Offline, Dojo Storage. I'm a member of the Gears team. Who here has heard of Gears? Awesome. After this talk, immediately I'm going to be giving another talk on Gears. So if you want to know more about Gears, I'll also be touching on that. I helped start something called co-working. Before I worked for Google, I worked for myself. And this is a way to have community if you work for yourself. Kind of like coffee shops, but you can kind of get to know people better. And I think there are people in Prague that are interested in setting some of these kind of things up. And then finally, I'm a member of this group at Google called the Open Web Advocacy group. And I'll be talking more about that. But it's awesome. We get to promote the open web, create JavaScript toolkits that help accelerate things. So that's one of our goals in that group. So I want to jump right in, and I want to show you things that work today using open web technologies. These are all cross-browser. On the upper left, you're seeing Dojo graphs. You're seeing graphing happening, and it works in Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari. You're seeing data streaming real-time from a server. On the right, you're seeing a large data grid with a big set of data, again working cross-browser. One of the things I want to show is I want to raise your expectations of what you can do with the open web today, cross-browser. At the bottom, you're seeing something called processing.js from someone named John Resig. He made jQuery. So doing animation, doing pretty advanced stuff, again, cross-browser, open web technologies. This is Yahoo Pipes, again built with web technologies, uses the canvas tag. It's a really advanced user interface. It's a very cool product if you haven't tried to use it yet. It lets you connect up data sources and do lots of interesting things. But again, cross-browser. So you could build user interfaces like this for your own stuff, again using the open web. This is a Zoho database. Zoho is a really amazing website. So I just want to show you, so again, cross-browser graphing, going into data sets, pulling up spreadsheets. Again, you know, this isn't your old school web. You know, you can do this today on the web. So again, seeing different kinds of charting. This is the Apple Store. You might think this is built with other kinds of technologies, but it's fully built using the open web, so you can zoom into things you might buy. You can look at them from different angles. And of course, this is Google Docs, being able to go offline, cross-browser, using things like Gears, which is a part of the open web as well, since it's open source. And things like HTML5 will start to help you go offline even more. But again, all these demos work today. I know that many of us in the web community sometimes get tired of hearing, oh, someday you'll be able to. Right? We've heard that for a long time. So I wanted to kick this talk off by showing you things that work today, cross-browser, that maybe you didn't know you could do on the web. Did everyone here see at least one thing that you may not have expected you could do today, cross-browser? Yeah? Oh, so you guys you've seen a lot. So okay. So you've heard me throw around this term open web. Who here has heard of the term open web? Okay, it's a bit of a newer term. It's been thrown around. A lot of folks are like, okay, what is that? What is the open web? So I want to start by giving you 5 things that make up the open web. The first part of the open web is cross-platform standards. And when I mean a standard, I don't mean something that has to come from a particular organization. I just mean a description of some kind. Hopefully it's only 3 pages that can allow you to build the same as someone else. And by cross-platform, I mean the open web is about multiple operating systems, multiple devices, multiple browsers. That's a key part of the open web. The second part of the open web is at least one open source implementation. It's not saying that everything has to be open source, but if there's not at least one open source implementation, it's probably not the open web. So on the open web, we've got Firefox, we've got Chrome, we've got WebKit. So that is an important part of the open web. The open web is all about no vendor lock-in. There's multiple vendors. There's not one company that controls the whole fate of that technology. That's a really important part of the open web. And as new things come along, you should ask, can multiple vendors play with this? Can multiple people be a part of this? A really important part of the open web is that anyone can innovate. Anyone in here could put together some new idea to extend the web. Big companies, small companies, individuals. And that's a really important part. And I love this drawing right here. This is from a patent. What do you think this is? The patent drawing. So it's a suit with spikes on it. What's that? A GIMP suit. That's a good. It could be. Evidently it's a suit to protect you from great white sharks. I found this. So anyone can innovate. They may not be the best ideas, but anyone can contribute. I don't know if that suit works. I don't know if it was tested. I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer. And the fifth thing, and it's so surprising that people don't mention this that much, the fifth important part of the open web is it's about powerful universal clients, which is really another word for browsers. The open web is all about making these universal clients more and more powerful. And, by universal, that means they're all over the place. So the open web is about strengthening this, giving them new features, letting them go offline, for example, or doing vector graphics, or making the JavaScript engines faster. So that's an important part of the open web, and people don't always talk about how important browsers are to the web. It's usually how we access the web about 99% of the time. And then there's a footnote. So those are the 5 things that make up the open web. And then there's some things that are important. They're not always true, but in general, they're an important part of the open web. The first one is the open web is mashable. What do I mean by that? So that means hyperlinks, for example. You can point deeply into things. That's a form of mashing into things. You can take data from 2 different places. You could take real estate data and Google Maps and mash it together to create your own thing. That's an important part of the open web. Searchable. If you look at any part, not any part, but most of the open web, there are these formats that you can crack open. They're human readable. A machine can crunch them, and you can search over them. That's really unique. And the final aspect of the open web is, in general, it's integrated. JavaScript, CSS, HTML, they play together. They're not over in a black box. They're not by themselves where you can't sort of interact with them. So before I jump on, I'm going to talk about why you should care. about the open web. Are there any questions about what the open web is? Okay. So why should you care? So I'm going to have two different reasons. Generally, there's two kinds of people. There's people that are pragmatic, and there's people that are idealistic, right? And most people are a mix of both. So I'm going to kind of give you two different reasons, to the idealistic people and the pragmatic people. And they'll discount each other's reasons, but they're both good reasons. And the idealist, I'm more of an idealist. They're sort of like, oh, that was loud. Sort of like magic unicorns in the air, right? They want to do something because it's the right thing, because it's possible. Whereas the pragmatist, I just wanted to throw some sound, sort of keep things up. The pragmatist just wants to get things done, right? They just want to get things done. So for those people who are idealistic, here's one reason that the open web matters. So when the future looks back to today, one of the things that's going to be in the history books is the web. I mean, we're given the chance to be present at the birth of something that's going to be, it's very important. In the 20th century, there's only a few inventions and people that it will be talked about, and the web is going to be one of those. So as computer scientists, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to really evolve this amazing thing that's come to us. So for the idealist, that's very exciting, and that's very powerful. I like to say it's like the Library of Alexandria has landed on our laps, right? And how often does that happen? And we can do amazing things with that. Of course, so for the pragmatist, you're probably like, who cares about that? For the pragmatist, one of the reasons the open web matters is it's safe. When I say the term open web, that's just a fancy term for what you've already been doing. It just means HTML, JavaScript, CSS, web browsers. In general, you've already been building using these technologies. So it's in your interest for them to continue to evolve so that 5 years from now, you don't have to rip out everything you did and replace it with something else. You want to evolve what you already have. And if you're a developer, it's in your interest to learn open web technologies because those skills are very portable. You're not learning a technology that's only used in one environment. The web is used by a majority of companies around the world. So these skills are very portable. So those are some pragmatic and idealistic reasons. So why does Google care? Right? Why did I get shipped out from California? I'm standing up here. Why does Google care? And I believe it's really important to be transparent with Google's motivations. So you can say, what's in it for Google? Why is someone from Google up here? So Google's motivation in the open web is simple. The more users we can get on the web, including the desktop web, the mobile web, and the better we can make web browsers, the more searching will happen, right? Because more people are on the web. The more advertisements we can show, and the better we can make our own applications. Like we can make a Google Docs that works faster or goes offline. And this leads to revenue. I'm sorry. This leads to revenue. Leads to money. And one of the things that's nice about Google is, yes, furthering the open web leads to revenue, but Google likes to put itself in a position where it can do the right thing and make a good business. So Google's interested in the open web because it's the right thing to do. It's the more idealistic side. And it's also the pragmatic thing to do. It generates more revenue because of this. So these are the motivations for why I'm up here and Google's interested in this. So I want to talk about, you probably have seen some of the presentations, things like Chrome. I want to just talk about how the open web underlies everything we're doing in our developer platform, just to show you that commitment. So there's things like Google Gears, which is an open source browser plugin that can give current web browsers new abilities. And now it's all about solving the open web problem of getting new innovation into the web faster. So I like to ask you all, XML HTTP request, Ajax. When was that invented? You'd be surprised. 1997. By Microsoft. Microsoft invented the ideas behind Ajax. And how long did it take until it was in enough web browsers that you could really use it? What year, might you say? 2004. Really 2005, when Safari started really supporting it as well. Wow, so that's a long time. And if everything takes that long to get in enough places on the web, that's not going to work. So Gears is trying to help solve that open web problem of getting new things into the current web faster. Chrome. Chrome is about helping to solve the open web problem of making web browsers that aren't just good for websites, but are good for web applications. So making a browser that's fast, responsive, secure when you're actually doing applications. Even Android is a part of the open web idea. Android is about an open source mobile operating system that can help to make it easier to develop for the mobile world and for the mobile web. Up to now, it can be challenging using the open web, so that's helping to solve that open web issue. Open Social is all about helping to solve the open web problem of bringing people and community and socialness into the web in an open way. So there's lots of other technologies. I mean, I can't describe how the open web underlies all of them, like GData or the Ajax APIs. But in general, the open web really underlies a lot of what we're doing at Google. And then there's also this Open Web Advocacy group. And our goal is literally just to help the open web in any way we can, working with partners, working by talking at conferences, open source, and so on. So hopefully you can see that we're committed to the open web and we're actually putting that into action. Okay, so what's the agenda? So I'm going to be giving these sort of lightning report cards on different aspects of the open web and some of the technologies. And the open web has become really big, so I'm just going to have to cherry pick some different things. So for example, I'll talk to you about vector graphics, and I'll give a little report card on that. And I'll begin with an introduction to that particular technology. So an introduction to vector graphics. Then you'll actually see a demo. You'll see this running. It's a sort of dance monkey dance or dance browser dance. You'll get to see the technology being used on multiple browsers and what it looks like with a demo. Then you'll get to see a code sample. It's actually a Commodore 64 screen. You'll get to see a code snippet of this technology being used. And then you'll see a report card, sort of browser compatibility. Sometimes you may feel like that, right, when you are dealing with browser compatibility. So you'll get a report card, and you're going to get to see where this is supported, where it's not, and then you'll see a final stamp. Is this ready for you to use? Is this not ready? Is this almost ready? Keep it on your radar. And then finally, we'll talk about something called JavaScript shims, which are a painful but necessary reality on the web. And they're very powerful. And I'll explain what these are in a bit. But these are kind of an almost magical solution that you can drop into your page to trick older web browsers into supporting newer things. And you'll see for each of these technologies, it can really accelerate what you can do today in a way that you may not have expected. So for every one of these, I'll talk about some JavaScript shims as well. So let's get started. The first one is vector graphics. Many people may wonder, what are vector graphics? Well, vector graphics are a way to describe the graphics on your screen using mathematical equations. If there's a circle, it uses a mathematical equation for a circle, for example. This is in contrast to raster graphics or bitmap graphics, so GIF, JPEG, PNG. These actually have an array of pixels. So if you have a circle, it just encodes that position in an array with a color. So this image really illustrates the difference between these. If I've got an image of a bottle, and I were to zoom in, at the top for vector graphics, you see it stays beautiful, it stays smooth because there's actually mathematical equations. If you zoom in on the bitmapped version, it breaks apart, it pixelates. And vector graphics are more and more important as users' expectations of user interfaces have rose, and as monitors have gotten larger and smaller, like an Android device or an iPhone device. So vector graphics are showing up more and more. And on the open web, you've got two choices. One is called the canvas tag, and the other is called SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphics, and I want to talk about both. Who here has heard of the canvas tag? Okay. And who here has heard of SVG? Okay, great. So for the canvas tag, what this is it's a simple HTML tag. It's the word canvas, right? You drop it in your page. And then it's a JavaScript API that you use to draw on that canvas. So it's pretty straightforward. And let's jump right in with a demo. This is Safari 3. This is all shown running using the canvas tag. We jump over to Firefox 3. We see the same demo running. It looks the same. We jump over to Internet Explorer 7. We see the same demo running. Again, canvas tag. Here's a code snippet. So I said there's an HTML tag, so we drop it in at the top there. This thing has a little laser. Yes. So we got that. And then we've got our JavaScript here. And in general, once you get your canvas tag, you get what's called your context. It's like your drawing surface. And then you just call JavaScript methods. So right here we're setting a fill color. And then we draw a filled rectangle at x10, y10, and then width and height. And that will draw the rectangle with the color given. So really straightforward. So the Canvas API just consists of many methods like this, where you can draw different kinds of shapes on the canvas. So here's the first report card, just to kind of tell you how the structure works. You're going to see various browsers, the two versions of Firefox, Safari 3, different versions of IE, and then Chrome and iPhone. And someone once asked me, how about Opera? For everything I talk about today, Opera's a yes. Opera has very strong support. And in general, what you'll see is this. So here's what's great about Canvas. It's supported very well across every browser. It's not natively supported by Internet Explorer, but there's one of these shims that you can use, which allows you to use the canvas tag on IE. So when you saw that demo running, and it was running on IE, IE was tricked. So let me tell you a little bit about what JavaScript shims are. So there are these JavaScript libraries. They're open source generally. You just drop them into your page, just like you would Dojo or jQuery. And after that, you can use the API or the standard like it's natively supported, but inside it may be doing tricks. So what's really cool is that the one for IE is very well done, and I'll talk about that. But Canvas is ready. This is a technology, and you'll see, I'm really pragmatic about this. I don't think a technology is ready until it's also supported on Internet Explorer and it's cross-browser, right? I mean, it's interesting, but it's usable if it's also on Internet Explorer. So you'll see that. So Canvas, using that shim, is ready to go. This is something you should start to learn and start using in your projects. Let's talk about that shim. It's called Explorer Canvas. It was kicked off by someone named Emil Eklund, and it's supported by Google. It's open source. Under the covers, it actually uses something called VML, or Vector Markup Language. Who here's heard of VML? Yeah, it's been in IE since like IE5. It's an older proprietary way to draw. And externally, it supports the Canvas API. Internally, it's actually using VML, but you're sheltered from that fact. One thing to keep in mind is you need to be careful with performance. As you saw, you can have good performance in that demo, but you should be testing regularly, because if you use it naively, you can have bad performance, but if you use it well, you can have good performance. And there is the URL. And I'll have a lot of URLs in this talk. At the very end, you can download this presentation yourself, so you can get these URLs. So before I jump away from Canvas, any questions about what you've just seen? So this is going to be the format of each of these little lightning subjects. Cool. So SVG, what is this? This is a markup language for graphics. So just like in HTML, you've got the form tag, you've got the button tag. SVG gives you a circle tag, a rectangle tag, a line tag, a path tag. So it feels like HTML, but they're graphical markup elements. Let's jump right in with a demo. this is Safari 3. This is SVG. And so we're able to scale these images. They have rounded corners. They've got handles. There's event listeners. You can do sort of advanced event listening. This is Firefox 3. Same thing. It's working, scaling, rotating. So pretty cool. Here's what some code looks like. So with SVG, you start by having a container element, SVG, and then you namespace it. And then here's one of those tags, really straightforward. So a rectangle, that's 60 width and height, put it at that position, and that's saying make the outline stroke green. So it's straightforward. So again, SVG just consists of a bunch of tags like this. What's the report card? So SVG is really interesting. So a lot of folks in here have heard about it. It's one of those things that hasn't been ready for a long time. But over the last year, something has secretly happened that most people don't know about. SVG is now supported across Opera, Safari, and Firefox very well, in a state that's very usable. Internet Explorer still doesn't support it, right? So we're at an almost. But that's really unique. I don't remember if people remember in 2003, 2004, Dynamic HTML, which was later renamed Ajax, was in the same state. It was considered dead. And then suddenly, everyone was surprised when sites started using it. We're going to start to see the same thing with SVG. What we need, because the cross-browser support has gotten much better, what we need is we need a shim. As you'll see over and over and over again, shims are a great way to help level the playing field and bring the future closer to today so you can actually use it. And I just want to mention, the iPhone has SVG support as well, but it's only with the most recent update. So unfortunately, SVG is not ready because of IE, but if we can get an SVG shim, like I mentioned, we'll be good to go. And I want to give you a sneak peek. I've been working on a shim for Internet Explorer. It's not done. It's going to take more time. But it internally uses Flash, which is on 97% of the installed base. And it does some magic with JavaScript in a way that you can just drop it into your page to trick IE into supporting SVG. It uses something called Microsoft behaviors. And I want to give you a sneak peek of what that will look like. This is IE7. This page is using the shim. This right here is an embedded SVG image, so there's markup for the paths. And there is IE rendering it. Internally it's using Flash, but you don't see that. At the bottom, what's unique about the library, and there we are with another thing, we're manipulating it. This is the IE developer toolbar. When we look at the document structure, we see that the SVG shows up as a first-class citizen. You don't see the Flash, so it feels like you would manipulate HTML. Here we have bouncing balls using SVG. So that's one of the unique aspects, is that it will look like a real citizen that you can manipulate with JavaScript. So more work to be done. I wanted to give you a taste. And when we have something like this, it can really help start making this a realistic technology. A lot of folks are like, SVG versus Canvas, which should I choose? You need both. Canvas is what's known as an immediate mode API. It's like really literally being on a canvas. As I'm painting on the canvas and I do a line or a circle, it doesn't remember that it's a line. It doesn't remember that it's a circle. It just becomes a part of the canvas. This makes attaching event handlers difficult. So Canvas tends to be really good for like if you want to draw things but you don't need them to be functional. There's tricks, but they get complicated. SVG is what's called a retained mode. So you have a tree. When I put a circle or a rectangle or a path, it knows it's a circle. And I can attach event handlers, just like you would with HTML. So SVG is really good for user interfaces, for things like you saw those images, right? Those are just rectangles with rounded corners. So it's much easier to do different things. So we need both, and we're getting there. That's the good point about vector graphics. Okay, so you've seen vector graphics. Let's jump to another part of the open web. Ajax, history, and bookmarking. Who here has built an Ajax application or is planning to build one? Okay, right. And have you noticed when you build it, that bookmarking stops working, the back and the forward buttons don't work correctly. Like the user does some action and they hit the back button and it jumps to the previous page when maybe it should have jumped back in action or something. Have you had this problem? Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. This is Internet Explorer 8, the beta, which actually supports natively knowing about Ajax history. And so what you see is you see the URL up here after the anchor. You see these links here. When we click them, the hash changes, and we can find out about it. So B, if the user manually changes it, see it tells us there, updates us. And I don't do it, but if you hit the back and the forward button, it would fire an event that you could know, hey, we've just changed the history. And then a user could bookmark that. Right? So that's what I mean by Ajax history and bookmarking. Here's what some of the code would look like. So I'll touch on HTML5 in a bit. This is actually, HTML5 will natively support Ajax history. Here's what it would look like. This works on IE8 right now. So you have a new event on hash change, and you give a function, update. And then the update function gets called when the users hit the back of the forward button or change the URL or bookmark, and then we can catch that. And generally in your hash string, you encode some state so that your application could then re-update itself dynamically. Does that make sense? Yeah. So where are we at? What's the report card? Well, the great thing is that you can do Ajax history and bookmarking across every browser. None of them natively support it. They're all using the tricks, one of these JavaScript shims. The nice one actually is IE8, natively supports it. That's really cool. They're the first ones to do that. See the footnotes here. But actually, Ajax history, because of the shims, is ready to go. You should be doing this in your Ajax projects. It's good for usability. It's what your users expect. And I mentioned these different shims. The way to get this going, the reason it's ready today, is using one of these JavaScript libraries. They're small. You should grab one. You got some great choices. DS History is nice. YUI Browser History Manager, that comes from Yahoo. It's well done. You can just grab that. Really Simple History, I was involved in that project. It's another nice choice. These toolkits are used across major sites. These techniques are used by Yahoo, by Google, by Ask.com. These specific libraries are also used by major websites. So Ajax history and bookmarking for the open web is very strong. And over time it'll be nice. We won't need these shims as the browsers start to natively support telling you. But right now the toolkits work well enough. So you can't talk about the open web without talking about JavaScript toolkits. This is one of the real strengths of the open web. And well, the strength and weakness, I like to say, how do you choose an Ajax framework? These are all different JavaScript toolkits today. How do you choose one? Just throw a dart. But for the state of the open web in 2008, something interesting has happened. We've really converged on 4 toolkits. jQuery, Prototype, to rewatch the animation again, Dojo, and GWT. So there was an explosion of toolkits, but people are converging on these 4 toolkits. And in 2007, it used to be the way people thought of these toolkits was like this. You had Prototype, which was your really small, lightweight Ajax library. You just dropped it in. It was kind of a helper library. GWT was for the crowd that didn't like JavaScript and loved Java, right? jQuery was the new kid on the block that used what was called a DOM-centric approach. You could give these cool sort of strings that would grab parts of your page. And then Dojo was seen as the kind of big, all-you-can-eat, sort of soup to nuts Ajax JavaScript platform. But in 2008, kind of a new taxonomy, a new way of seeing things has happened. What's happened is all the toolkits have stolen ideas from each other in a positive way, and they've all arrived at the same place. So Prototype has always been small. It's still small. jQuery has always been small. Dojo Core is now as small as both of them and gives you a bunch of stuff. So for all 3, if you just want a minimal JavaScript library, you can grab that. They're all the same that way now. One of the strengths of Dojo was it used to have this huge plugin community called Dojo X. Well, Prototype has a great one now, and jQuery has a great one as well. So now you've got this really small core, but then you've got these extensions when you want to do things like client-side storage or graphics. So they all have really strong plugins now. And it used to be that only Prototype and Dojo had really good user interface widgets, but now they all do. Scriptaculous has always been there. jQuery UI is very strong now, and Dojo has Digit. So what's interesting is in 2008, and we're kind of going into 2009, the JavaScript toolkits have really ended up in the same place. And if you're not using a toolkit past a very minimal project, you should be. If you find yourself rolling your own toolkit, you probably shouldn't. I know it's fun, but and here's what's great. These are ready. These are one of the real strengths of the open web. All of these can really accelerate your development. And they've all ended up in a similar place. So jQuery has querying, Dojo has dojo.query. These can really accelerate the work that you're doing, and they're fast. These guys have done a lot of work to make this stuff production ready. Okay, jumping to another part of the open web is web fonts. This is what you think it is, right? It's advanced typography for the web. So you don't have to generate bitmaps, so you don't have just a couple of fonts. Yes? So GWT has not converged in its approach. What's interesting about GWT is they've been able to show that you can get very good performance and size because of the build system and the specific profiles for different browsers, but they haven't been able to converge as much because it's really a different environment. So GWT remains an outlier in terms of approaches. I personally think that some of the advantages that GWT has, JavaScript as a language is evolving and getting faster. So, they're all competing against each other in a positive way. So, good question. Web fonts, right? Web fonts, we've been talking about them since 1997. We haven't been able to use them. I want to show you a cool demo. This is Safari 3. Again, using a browser shim called Dojo GFX Fonts. You're seeing, those are fonts. Those are embedded fonts. And also a graph done with open web stuff. What's really cool is they're all generated, so the code generates it. We jump over to Firefox 3. We see the same thing, so cross-browser fonting. We jump over to Internet Explorer. We see fonting as well. So that's actually a vector image generated through JavaScript. Those are dynamically generated, right? Again, so that's a font. We jump over to Safari 3. We run the same demo. It's working. So this has really shifted things. Really, in the last 6 months, this new shim has come along, and it's changed the game a little bit. You can now do cross-browser web fonts. Yes? So the question is, can the text be selected by the mouse? It currently can't, unfortunately. That's one of the strengths of web fonts, right? That we'll be able to do that. But you can't do that with this approach, unfortunately. Under the covers, underneath these toolkits, web fonts are unfortunately pretty fragmented. Things have shifted a lot the last year. Here's the situation. Internet Explorer has supported something called embedded OpenType since about 1998. Other folks don't. But Safari 3 and Firefox 3 have really become leaders in this. Safari 3 has now supports something called Truetype Fonts, which is really nice because we already have a lot of Truetype fonts out there. And Firefox 3.1 is moving towards supporting those. And there's something called SVG fonts, which I consider the dark horse, which actually Safari 3 and Firefox 3.1 support. So at the native support level, it's pretty fragmented. Here's what the native support looks like. In your CSS, you use what's called font face. You give a name to the font, so this is being called Kimberly, and then you give a URL to the Truetype file or the EOT file. IE supports the same syntax. You give the format, and then you can use it like a normal font. Here we have an H1 element. We say use the Kimberly font, and if it's not there, it'll degrade to sans serif. Right? So you know, if you don't want to use the shim, you can already start doing this for Firefox 3, Safari 3 people, and you could also just turn the font into an EOT file as well. So what's the report card? So Safari 3 is the winner. They've just had great support for these things. These browsers here in yellow, they require a JavaScript shim. There's only one really strong one right now, DojoGFX Fonts. Again, I said Safari 3.1 is the winner here. They just support almost everything. And IE supports its own thing. So is this ready? It's almost ready. That shim changed what we can do. It's usable. It can be a little glitchy. But it's definitely something that if you need this, you should start to look at it. You should test, obviously. But it's been kind of exciting because before 6 months ago, you couldn't have done cross-browser fonting at all. So this is something that's starting to wake up both at the shim level and at the native browser level. So that's something that's really cool. And here's URLs. So DojoGFX Fonts, that's a nice blog post about it. And there's something called Cipher, which is an older technique that actually uses Flash that can give you web fonts as well. There's a little more involved. And then here's just a glimpse of what the future would look like when there's native support. This is Safari 3. These are 10 free Truetype fonts that you can use on the web. All this text is being displayed using that CSS that you saw and applied to different things. The text is selectable. Remember I said that the open web is about integration, so you could, when the mouse runs over it, you could shift things, you can change things, so it's not an image. And one of the really important things about web fonts is search engine optimization. If you're doing a bunch of images in your page, search engines can't see those. But if it's text with web fonts, search engines can. And that's really important. That can really help your ranking and people being able to find things. Okay, CSS. What's the state of CSS? So CSS is a big topic, right? I want to kind of cherry pick and tell you some interesting things. Something called CSS Animations, Reflections, and Masks. So you can do some pretty amazing things using CSS. I want to talk about that. CSS 2.1. Why should you care about that? So all browsers support CSS 1. Some of CSS 2. That tends to be what you use in your day-to-day. CSS 2.1 gives you more selectors. Those are those, you know, when you want to attach a rule. So it gives you more. And then CSS 3 gives you more selectors and has something really nice, which is multi-column layout. This allows you with your CSS to just say this takes up 2 columns or 3 columns. So we won't have to do those tricks anymore. So that's why CSS 3 is interesting. Here's a demo in Safari 3 of the CSS animation and stuff. All that's done with CSS. So you can really apply different kinds of effects. Again, Safari 3, that reflection is done using CSS. This is called a mask, so one image is masking it, again using CSS. So we're going to mask that over that to create nice fuzzy edges. Again, here's another, this is a gradient done with CSS. Nice rounded corners. This is actually, you could use an SVG as a mask. So you saw a circle, masking over that, again using CSS and a little SVG, so that's really cool. Here's a CSS 2.1. Remember I said it gives you new selectors. So here's an example of that. Let's say I have a div with a custom attribute. Right here is a new selector, so I can say if my attribute equals hello, make the background color blue. So that's an example. So that right there is a CSS 2.1 selector. So what's the report card? So CSS effects, they're really cool. They're not ready, unfortunately. They're only Safari 3. Safari 3 has kind of invented this idea, but Firefox, so it's really cool. Safari and Firefox, they've been kind of tossing the ball back and forth to each other, and they're really innovating and evolving things. So Firefox 3.1 is picking up a lot of these things. So that's been a really cool dynamic. CSS 2.1 is ready. What's really cool is IE6 supported some of it, IE7 supported even more, and Internet Explorer 8 supports all of CSS 2.1. So this is something you can really start using. Look over the spec. There's lots of cool things in there that you can use. CSS 3 is really nice. It's not ready, unfortunately. Safari 3 and Firefox 3 are doing really good about supporting it, but IE8 doesn't really support it yet. So we're going to have to keep doing those hacks to get multiple columns. We've gotten used to them; they're not the best, but relief is on the horizon for that one. So HTML5, what is this? This is really exciting. So HTML4 came out, I don't know, like what, 99, 98? You know? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's been a long time. HTML5, that's Ian Hickson. He kicked it off with something called the What Working Group. They were frustrated. They wanted to see HTML evolve. So they said, you know what, we're just going to start evolving it. They got some of the browser folks together, and they started defining a new version of HTML. And the W3C, which officially watches over HTML, said, okay, we accept that. We'll evolve it with you. And it's currently being put together and has two parts. One of the parts documents how the web currently works. So it looks at HTML in all the current browsers and says, here's how they really work. So we have a description if you want to write your own browser, or 50 years from now someone wants to read these HTML documents, well, now they'll know how to do that. But the other part's really cool. It's a bunch of new features. It's about really evolving HTML to do things that folks have wanted. And some of these new modules are drawing. One of the ideas is that it documents things that people are already doing. So it documents the canvas tag, which Apple invented actually. It'll talk about using SVG, client-side storage, offline, editing, drag and drop. It actually just takes Internet Explorer's drag and drop functionality and describes it so that other browsers can just clone it. And of course, Antipony. So there's a lot of cool new stuff in there. Unfortunately, it's not ready. But the nice thing is it's showing up. IE8 is supporting some of HTML5. Pieces of it are already showing up in newer browsers. So it's not ready because the older browsers don't support it yet. But it's exciting. And one thing that's nice is that a lot of the functionality that you see here is possible today using JavaScript shims. So keep your eye on HTML5. So I want to talk just about the XML web. This is something that folks have forgotten about, and a lot of folks have kind of considered it dead. This was an integrated set of technologies based on XML, and that it runs in the browser, right? You're not just using it on the server. So I kind of want to give you a snapshot of where is that at. And I can't really give you a demo because it's XML. I'll show you a bunch of pointy tags. It's not that exciting. So what is the report card? Well, you might be surprised. So XML, there is a strong XML parser in all the major browsers today that you can use with JavaScript. You can do advanced things with it. That is ready, right? XSLT, that's a way to translate XML into something else. Generally HTML to display on the page. So you might get some XML from the web server that describes a customer, run some XSLT, and then display it on the page. XSLT is very well supported across all the browsers now. You don't always need these technologies, but they're really nice to have in your tool belt when you need them. XPath. This is a way to grab a specific part of an XML document. They're kind of like CSS selectors. They're really nice once you have them. Those are very well supported across the different web browsers. And these are things you can use cross-browser. CSS XML, what is this? Well, let's say you get some XML and you want to display it to the user. Well, it turns out you can apply CSS to your XML. You could say this book element, draw it with a blue border, draw it as a block, and you can do that. And it's supported very well on Firefox, Safari. IE8 has more support for it, so it's almost there. But it's a pretty cool approach because it means you can just serve XML and then apply some CSS, so you're doing less work if you're getting something from a database. And then there's XHTML, which is generally the thing that has caused people to believe that the XML web hasn't been successful. Xhtml is a version of HTML built with XML. Unfortunately, that's not ready. Again, it's supported in a lot of browsers. IE doesn't support it. There's probably social reasons that Xhtml hasn't been successful as well. People don't always write perfect markup. So I think in general we're going to see people drifting away from this. But the toolkit of other XML techniques is very strong. Who here has used jQuery? Under the covers in jQuery, when you use querying, it is using XPath a lot of the times because it's very fast, it's easy to work with. So these are good things to know. Yeah?
What do you mean by XHTML not being ready?
So unfortunately, it's not usable in Internet Explorer. Well, you can get Internet Explorer to not fail when there's Xhtml present, but you can't do interesting things with it in Internet Explorer.
The problem is that if you serve the Xhtml as text/HTML, the Internet Explorer will consider that an HTML document. But if you serve the correct MIME type application/XML plus XHTML, the Internet Explorer doesn't know what to do at all. It shows the download dialog for the user. So the true XHTML, just Internet Explorer doesn't recognize it.
Yeah.
I just thought we were talking about .html documents that declare the doc type as XHTML.
Yeah, so you can do that, but you're just kind of using tricks that IE doesn't see it. So unfortunately, you can't do the cool things that you could maybe do if you had Xhtml. So this is one of the issues with Xhtml. There hasn't been a really strong killer thing that it addresses, that it enables. So, but that's a whole long discussion that we could talk about afterwards about Xhtml and issues with it. So good question. So one other thing that's really interesting is video on the web. Turns out that HTML5 is giving you a way to drop videos into a page with a video tag and an audio tag. And here's a demo. This is a special version of Opera that's supporting it. Wikipedia. Can you turn it down just a little bit? Turn it down just a little bit. So there's a native video tag in there. This is actually SVG video. What's unique about that is you can apply masks over the video, reflections. If you were to select that text, it would work. So the video becomes a part of the browser. So here's what some of that code looks like. So you get a video tag. You can grab some JavaScript, you can play, you can pause it. Here's what's really cool too. You can add cue ranges. So when it enters different parts of the video, it'll give you callbacks. So you could cue parts of your page to update. Maybe have chat going on at the same time. Fortunately, video on the web's not there. The reason I showed it to you is because it's really cool. A lot of work is happening behind the scenes, especially Firefox, Safari. People are starting to make some very interesting shims. It's starting to get closer. This is not ready, but I think it's something to keep an eye on because there's a lot of interest in it and people are trying to drive it forward. So like I said, the open web is huge. There's so many things, and I just want to touch on some other cool things going on and tell you whether they're ready or not. So client-side storage. This is the ability to store lots of data on the client side when the user gives permission, hundreds of K or megabytes. That can help with latency, it can help you do offline, it can help you make things faster. This is actually ready. Again, using a shim like Dojo Storage or using gears. So this is something you can start doing. So WordPress, for example, uses features like this to accelerate the user interface. Offline, that's ready to go. Again, using something like gears. Cross-domain. This means one website securely talking to another website. That's ready to go using a trick called JSON-P. So Google that if you need to do that. So a lot of the Google Ajax APIs, for example, use these cross-domain tricks to let you script the websites and do interesting things from JavaScript. In the last 2 years, something really interesting, fast JavaScript has been going on. V8, TraceMonkey for Firefox. The Safari team's been doing a lot here. So we're going to see a really quantum jump in the performance of JavaScript. Unfortunately, we're almost there in terms of this being usable. The holdout Internet Explorer, there's not plans for a fast JavaScript interpreter. But for the other browsers, we're getting really fast JavaScript interpreters coming down the wire pretty soon now. So it's already in Chrome, but in the next year or two, you're going to see that in probably Firefox 3.2, Safari 3 something, or Safari 4, and that's going to shift things a lot. And then finally, there's something I like to call JavaScript++. This is work that's been happening in the last couple of years to make programming in the large with JavaScript easier, evolving JavaScript as a language to really keep up. And unfortunately, that's not ready to use, but there's been a lot of strong work in terms of getting those features. So that's something to look forward to, down the road a little bit. But JavaScript is being refactored into a language that can support larger projects. So I want to end the talk just about taking action. If there's some technology, hopefully you saw that there's something that you didn't expect can be used cross-browser today to do some capability that you need in your project. Learn about it. Look it up in a search engine, learn a bit about it, start playing with it. A lot of these technologies are pretty approachable and pretty easy to start using. So choose one that you want to learn more about and then start playing with it somehow. So thank you very much. So if you have any questions, just come up afterwards, because I only have 5 minutes till the next talk. That's also going to be on, it's going to be on gears. So.